Okay, it's official now. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming again. The second edition of the Introduction to Zen. Anyone have any questions? I know last week we talked, pretty much about meditation and getting a practice going, and wondering if everybody tried that or has been doing that, or if you had anything that came up during that time or questions you had about that. Hi, yeah, Colleen.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
A question that came up, I've read this and I've practiced over time, having your hips elevated over your knees, and you recommended that again last week. However, I've been sitting.
Oops, lost the connection.
Sitting in a chair. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay. So I don't know where I cut off, but my question is, if I'm sitting in a chair and your recommendation is to have your hips elevated higher than your knees, I mean, how important is that given back and knee issues over here?
Well, you want to be comfortable. Even the Buddha said, make a nice place where you can be comfortable, and get in a posture where you can sit comfortably without straining your back muscles or your stomach muscles or anything, and so your back can be aligned. And sometimes they say you sit in a dignified pose. So it's something that you just have to experiment with. Everybody's a little bit different. The reason I say hips above the knees is because typically that will allow you to sit kind of upright without straining, and let your back be balanced in a column. And in popular culture, in the US, it's so interesting because there's so many pictures of people sitting cross-legged on a cliff with their fingers like this, and and their knees are up, and it's just, that's a terrible meditation posture, actually, because if your knees are above your hips, you tend to you're pulling forward. Or if you're trying to sit upright in that position, your back muscles get really tight to hold yourself in that spot. So when the hips are above the knees, then it's much easier to have your back upright without using hardly any muscles. And once you're kind of in that position, you can kind of rock or kind of do small circles and kind of find this spot, and all of a sudden you'll find this spot where you're just balanced, and then you can just hang right there. But so you may only need to have your hips an inch or so above your knees, or some. For me, I like it maybe 3 or 4 inches. Like I say, everyone's different that way, but you don't want to be, slumped forward, and you don't want to be like Donald Duck, where he's all back, and tight like that. So the trick is to get the body in a position that you can sit very, very still, for an extended length of time. So it just takes a little experimentation, and you may get it right one day and then not quite be able to get back to it the next day, and then the next day after that maybe back good again. And you'll just, and you might try different types of cushions that you're sitting on. If they're too springy, that doesn't work too well. Sometimes it's better if they're kind of firm. The meditation cushions we use they're either filled with well, most of them are filled with buckwheat hulls, which you can kind of move them around and shake them, and then all of a sudden they get really solid, but they're shaped right to you. And that's the ones you'll typically see in a meditation hall.
Thank you.
I hope that helped. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I'll experiment with it. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, and then, your hands too. Like you can just put your hands, like, I'll kind of stand up here for a second, but I don't know if you can see, but you can just put your hands on top of your knees like this, or you can put them in this kind of a position. If they're in this position, and your hips are kind of high, they'll tend to drop down. And so you might put another little cushion underneath your hands just to support your arms. That way your arms don't get tight also. So it's something that it's meditation instruction like that is really great in person, because someone who knows what they're doing can kind of help you adjust really quickly. When you're on your own, you kind of, hit or miss a little bit. Anybody else, or calling anything else? Okay. All right. Well, I'll
Bruce, I see that Eli has his hand up.
oh, hi Eli. Yeah, sorry, missed you. I was looking down.
Sorry, guys. Sorry. Hi. I've got two questions. One is, I'm sorry, I'm outside. But, the first question is, what do you think about meditating when lying down? Doesn't make any sense. Does it still count as meditation, or it's more like, trying to fall asleep? So that's one. And second, are there any alternatives to sitting on a chair, like sitting on a floor, but maybe, I don't know, like on two pillows so that your hips a little bit higher, or any other options? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, first, let me say about lying down. I think if you are an experienced meditator, then you can transfer, to be lying down, and that can work for you. I think as a beginner, it's very easy to just like lose focus a little bit, and it depends on, again, it depends on your individual body structure. Like if I'm laying down on a hard floor or like a futon or something, it's not that comfortable for me to lay on my back for a long time. And then it depends on if your head's on a pillow or not and things like that. But I think, once you get good at sitting meditation, then you could try lying down. You want to do this same kind of breathing and things. Your question about sitting on a floor, in the meditation hall, we'll put down a cushion. I'll show you what it looks like. We have these kind of big square black cushions, and that goes down. It's kind of thin foam, and that goes down first, and then on top of that, you have a cushion like this, and so your knees are resting on the square cushion, and then you sit on the other cushion, or you tuck it between your legs and kind of sit back on it. And that's another place where you'll have to experiment a little bit. Some people like a thin one to kind of sit on, or a thicker one, or that's another thing where in the Zendo we usually have a lot of different sizes, and we're showing people, we have them try them out and things like that. But still, it's the same idea. And as far as sitting cross-legged, if you can sit in the lotus or half lotus position, which I can't, my knees just won't do it. That's sort of the ideal position. People who are into yoga and stuff can sometimes do that, and young people can do it. My daughter can do it really easy, get in the lotus position. She's 9 years old though. So I sit in what they call seiza, which is I have my two knees are together. You know how you see it's like a kneeling sort of position. And so my knees and my feet are flat down on the square cushion, the foam cushion, and then I've got that round cushion kind of between my calves, and I sit back on that. And that's the position I've been in for 20-25 years, and I can sit like that for a long time. And there again, you have to find a cushion that works for you. And but the whole idea though, and also in that seiza position, your hips are above your knees. And then even in the lotus position, you have a little cushion under you. So even in that, your hips are above your knees. Like I say, if you look at the pictures that you see in magazines and on the internet, a lot of times people are sitting cross-legged with their knees way up and their butt flat on the ground. And it's just not a very comfortable or sustainable position for meditating. Does that answer your question, Eli?
Yes, it does. Thank you. My daughter is also 9 years old, so yeah, she can do a lot of stuff that I cannot do anymore. So
Oh, I wish they could meet. That'd be great.
yeah, fantastic. Yeah, same age.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. That answers the questions. Yeah. Thanks.
Rodrigo?
I want to share my experience. I use something like this,
Huh?
which is like a blanket. It is a Colombian ruana, which is made out of wool.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
put it on the floor as you put that square black thing that you show. And then I also have this other cushion.
Yeah.
That it is as you describe it. So once it adjusts to my body, it becomes firm.
Yeah.
So when I can practice Zen sitting down in a chair, and it's very good.
Yeah.
But I prefer to be on the floor on this one than this other one. Sometimes I'm flexible and I can do the half lotus. And other times I can just go like this with my legs crossed.
Wow.
Now my knees touch the floor, but when they couldn't touch the floor, I put also pillows under the knees, like for support. And in this position, being on the floor like a triangle, I feel more centered.
Yeah.
And I can stay longer. That's my experience. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rodrigo. That's great. It's impressive you can do that. I can't get my knees down on the floor like that. Yeah, so yeah, whatever cushion, you don't need sort of the official cushions. I would just say that, whatever's soft enough that your knees are comfortable on the ground, and one that's firm and not too bouncy to sit on is good. Good. Thank you, Rodrigo. Ruth.
Hi, Bruce. Did you say something about eyes open versus eyes closed? Because I can't imagine sitting with my eyes half open. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Most meditation instructors, once you get into your upright position, whether chair or not, you kind of raise a little bit the back of your head and sort of tuck your chin in slightly. And then you might gaze down at about a 45-degree angle, roughly, to a spot maybe 3 feet in front of you. So your eyes are kind of half closed. And that's something that takes a little getting used to as well. But the reason for that is, our eyes, we can be distracted by the slightest movement, right? Which is why, especially beginning, it's good to be in a quiet room where nothing's moving around, like I would say for you, and for me too. I have a cat and you have cats, and the cat will always come in and bug you when you're trying to be quiet like that, right? So leave them outside. And because you want to maintain a very still and, I would say, concentrated, but not in a way that you're concentrating on any thoughts or anything, but just, you're just there really feeling your body and just being grounded, like Rodrigo said, on the ground and feeling that. Now, after you get used to meditating, and we used to sit with facing each other kind of in a big square, but there's also, you can just face a wall. Try it either way, and just see how that goes. But once you get used to it, then you start to get really in touch with your body in meditation, because you're being so quiet that you feel the subtleties. And one of the subtleties is you can feel, am I sleepy or am I like wide awake, right? And so the recommendation is, if you're feeling sleepy, then open your eyes more. And if you're feeling really wide awake, then go ahead and close your eyes. It has different effects for different people, but there again, this is one of those sort of experimental areas. And it's why I mentioned last week that it takes a month or two of kind of very steady sitting practice to really kind of get in tune with it and to start to feel, comfortable quickly. Okay.
Yeah, but there's so much visual stimulus. I mean, like, it's
Yeah.
just another thing to notice and then to like not notice, or,
Yeah.
why do we do that? I mean, why is closing your eyes not preferable?
Well, I think it all depends on what's going on in your mind. It's sometimes when our eyes are closed, where it's almost like we're dreaming and we see things on the back of our eyes and things like that. And so if you can focus on a spot on the ground in front of you and just kind of really stay focused on that, not focused in a way where you're like, it's in focus, because in a way you relax your eyes and they can go a little bit out of focus, but just stay on that one spot. The whole idea is to get so still that you really notice. It's funny because when you get really still like that, of course, then you notice so many things, right? It's kind of the struggle of meditation. And this is where this discipline of it, it slowly gets better and better. And you slowly are able to really, really settle down. And of course, you'll notice your thoughts. And, one of the things I say about that is don't try to stop your thoughts. Don't push them away. Don't chase them. Somebody told me one time a kind of a cute saying. They said, if a train of thought comes through, just let it pass through the station. Even if you have a ticket, don't get on, And so just, let them come and go. Let everything come and go. If you hear a car go by, just let it come and go. If you get distracted, just recognize that you're distracted and come back to it, and just keep coming back. And you get better at it. It's just like playing piano or something. You just kind of keep at it, and then things get easier, and you're able to play a song. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, if I could, I just wanted to, back up some of the things you're saying and add a little bit from my experience. About sitting on the ground, I just wanted to mention that the posture that Rodrigo is talking about, we call Burmese posture. And after years of sitting in, not many years in lotus, because I could never tolerate that, but half lotus I got comfortable with. But after a certain point, I found Burmese was easier. And I do recommend that if you're sitting on the ground. And also about the hips being higher than the knees. Of course, if you're sitting on the floor or on the ground, you'll see for yourself why that makes good sense. But for sitting in a chair, I don't think it's that critical. And I would really recommend that all of you take a brief listen to Roshi's talk that's on the homepage of the Big Mind website. It's down at the bottom now, and it's where Roshi talks about how I sit now. And he does sit in a chair. And I think what he is describing is similar to my experience, that sitting in a chair is fine.
Yeah.
And not stressing out about being in the perfect posture, just relaxing. That, if you think about how this posture became kind of standardized, it was in cultures where they didn't have chairs, not that they couldn't sit on stumps or something, but part of the virtue of the lotus posture or half lotus or even Burmese, if you can do it, is that you're able to, as Bruce said, you can relax without falling over and without feeling that you're putting too much pressure on any part of your body. So the key is relaxation rather than a particular firm posture. And I think if you listen to that recording, you'll be able to kind of put aside some of these questions about how, there's no perfect posture. And even about, Ruth, you asked about sitting with your eyes closed or open. I think it's really a personal choice. I, for one, have always been more comfortable sitting with my eyes closed. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Although in the traditional monastery, people get smacked for closing their eyes. So if you need somebody to smack you, then you're kind of out of luck if you're by yourself. But otherwise, as Bruce said, experiment. And I think if you experiment with the goal of being comfortable and relaxed, rather than being still or being, not having this kind of thought or that kind of thought, then you'll be better off. Sorry, I got to answer this phone. But anyway, I hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mark. And yeah, it's it should be easy and relaxing. And yeah, I concur with what Mark had to say. And also, I think Dogen Zenji mentions, don't have your room too light or too dark. Don't have your room too hot or too cold. Just make it very pleasant. And just take give yourself permission to take some time and just sit there and do that. Okay. And you don't have to strain or push on anything, like I say about the thoughts and things like that. Okay. Yeah, Ken.
Yes. One of the things I found that really helped me relax, and I'm wondering if it's, an appropriate technique. And it's not so much having a thought, but it was a visualization. So I'm picturing waves on a beach rolling in and out. It was a way to calm my mind and occupy my mind to some degree. Is that a mistake for a beginner, or is that a good way to start? Where do visualizations stand in meditation again?
Yeah, in Tibetan style practice, they use visualizations on purpose, but it's for more advanced practitioners, and they're visualizing Manjushri Buddha and these various different deities, kind of symbolic characters so that's something for more advanced users. What you're doing with the waves is kind of like when you count sheep when you go to sleep, kind of thing. And it's fine, whatever it takes, whatever gets you settled down. In the 3 pillars of Zen, Yasutani Roshi talks about counting the breath. The thing I like about counting the breath rather than visualizing a scene is that you are giving your mind something to work on, to occupy it, rather than just thinking about your grocery list or some meeting you have coming up or whatever. And the technique about it, if you read in there, is to count on your inhale, count 1, and on your exhale, count 1, and then the next one, 2 in, 2 out, number 3 in, 3 out. And it's surprisingly difficult to do that at first, because you'll either forget to count, or you'll go past 10 and you'll be up to 13 or 14 and go, oh, I'm only supposed to go to 10, right? And this is just a discipline thing. And it's very effective, I think, and I still do it, after all these years. For a few different counts as I sit down, just to kind of get in the space of that. But the discipline of it is, at first, is to make sure you go from 1 to 10 and start over at 1 and go to 10, and don't go past 10 and don't stop before 10. And you'll get to a point where you can do that, for 10 minutes or so. And then you can just kind of drop that, once you get comfortable with maintaining your concentration in your mind on the counting.
It's 2 o'clock.
That was my computer.
Oh, thought it was my wife. But so it's another one of these sort of disciplines that builds up a kind of strength and willpower, that and these, both the relaxing part of Zen meditation and this counting sort of discipline, and just having a meditation schedule every day builds up this kind of like I say, strength and willpower that spills over as a and relaxation, into your daily life. And that's when you start to feel how the meditation is serving you by doing that. And then kind of all of a sudden you'll start recognizing, gee, I'm a little more relaxed. And actually, during my working years, there were times when I would just go out and sit in my car, and I'd just sit there in my car and count my breath and relax. And it was just really a nice break, and pretty much you can kind of tap into that whenever. I mean, I've been standing in the grocery line, and all of a sudden I thought I started noticing my breath and counting a little bit, and I just, kind of settled down and got in the space of standing in the grocery line instead of being impatient with all the people in front of me.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Paul, how are you?
Morning, Bruce. Quite well, thank you very much.
Good.
I got a question on sitting. Where do you sit? Do you sit on your sitting bones, or do you sit on your tailbone if you're on your cushion? So I got 2 sitting bones on my butt, but I also got a tailbone. And
yeah, I don't get onto my tailbone so much, because for me, that's kind of being back a little bit too far. My cushion's basically kind of under my thighs and my top of my thighs, kind of. But that's me.
yeah, okay, but that was what I was asking for.
Yeah,
Because I'm experimenting now.
yeah,
Because I know, so with your belly, it will drop if you breathe very deeply, then your belly suddenly. And I got the same experience also with my hips at a certain moment, that it's lowering.
yeah,
I'm still experimenting with it.
yeah. You
after all
kind
those
of
years.
you kind of drop into it in a way.
Yeah.
What was the other thing you said just a second ago?
Yeah, so with tailbone and the sitting bones, and
Right.
dropping with the belly if you.
Oh, the belly. Yeah, I did want to talk about the breathing part of it a little bit. So it's it's well known in Zen circles and stuff that there's an area of muscles, a band of muscles right below your belly button, maybe an inch or two, that goes across there. And this is called the hara. And even in martial arts, this is a very important center of power. Okay. And in meditation, after you're sitting upright, you want to let your belly completely relax as well. You don't want to have your stomach muscles tight or your back muscles tight, right? You want to be able to be balanced, and so that you can actually let your belly just hang completely loose. And so many of us grew up, my dad was always saying, suck in their belly, he's a Navy officer, and but if you can get in touch with that band of muscles, you can tighten those muscles, and that'll push the air out, and then you'd let go, and the air will naturally come in. So instead of kind of breathing up here with your lungs that kind of moves your upper body around, if you can just squeeze those muscles in and out, you can stay even more still than you would be if you're kind of breathing normally in the upper chest. And because that hara area is really a center of gravity, when we say I've got a gut feeling about something, that's where it's happening, right? And it's it's very good for kind of core strength stuff. And then in martial arts, they always keep a certain tension there, because then the rest of their body can kind of move around that center freely, right? And martial artists, even monitor their opponent's breath that way, so that they know when the other one's about to strike and things like that. It's very interesting. And I've never done martial arts, but I've read a bit about it. But in Zen, this what we call hara breathing is another thing to develop over time in your meditation. And just, it's very interesting, because all of a sudden, also, you have to make sort of a conscious effort to squeeze those muscles. And so all of a sudden you're out of your head and you're down here. And it's a very interesting thing, because we spend so much time, in our heads, thinking and plotting and scheming and all the things we do. And it can bring us your energy and all that down, which is nice. Okay, any other questions on? Yeah, hi, Ruth.
Roshi did it at one point. He took us through how to meditate like that, like certain long breaths, and do that a certain number of times, deep breaths, and then regular breaths. And then he said, eventually you'll just be the breath. And I'm just wondering what that means to you, being the breath. You can talk.
Well, what happens is, you've got so much focus, let's say, on, moving these muscles, and so much focus on, you can feel the air going in and out of your nose and mouth. And you just kind of, your consciousness just kind of drops everything but that, I guess is the way I would say it. And so you kind of, and you feel like, your breath actually ends up throughout your entire body, right? Goes through your lungs, gets in your blood system, and, oxygen goes through everywhere. And this is very important, because it makes you realize how deeply connected we are to air and to our breathing. And it's kind of like, the old saying, you are what you eat, what else could you be, right? Then everything that's made up in your body has come from you eating, clear from before you were born, right? and so, and the air, and you got oxygen from your mother before you were born, and food. And then afterwards, they spank you and you start breathing the air. And I mean, it's just a very fundamental thing of life. And we're all breathing the same air, and it's connected to everything else, and the trees are breathing it, and all the animals. And it's just kind of a nice thought. But when you're sort of being the breath, you're not really thinking about all that. You're just feeling the depth of air going through you. And it's not something you're really thinking about. It's just something you start to feel. It's a good feeling. Okay, anything else on meditation? Okay. Yeah, hi, Paul.
Just with that squeezing of your hara muscles, do you mean you pull them inwards a little bit, or?
Yeah, you tighten them, and you just tighten them. You can just feel it squeezing, and it just naturally pushes the air out. It pushes up on your intestines and your diaphragm, and it just kind of pushes the air out. When I go to bed at
and
night,
after that, so it pushes it out, and then
all you have to do is relax those muscles,
and then let go again. So you pull in,
and the air
and then
comes
let
back.
go again. Okay, so it's a movement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, clear. So not constantly squeezing the hara muscles, but squeezing it, letting it go, and naturally.
Yeah. A contraction and release. Yeah. And it's another kind of technique that takes a bit a bit to master, but it's definitely worth working on. And, you know, when I go to bed at night, I lay down there and I sit there and I breathe that way. And it's interesting because I'm sort of consciously focusing on those muscles. I stop thinking about the day-to-day stuff and I go to sleep really fast.
Yeah.
I've always been able to sleep easily, but you know, it's a nice thing to end the evening with for me. And during the day too, I kind of pay attention to it. But when in your sitting meditation, when you're sitting there is a good time to, you know, practice that and see how it works. And it's hard to do it right off the bat because usually, you know, you'll sit down and you'll just kind of be breathing normally and you just have to kind of settle in and then all of a sudden go there and start squeezing, feeling that.
Another question, if you have back pain, so what should you do? Let me put it generally.
It depends on where it's coming from. I mean, you know, some of us have kind of back issues anyway. And but if it's coming from just tension,
yeah,
from your sitting, then you know then you're in the wrong position. You need to adjust your hips or your knees or something to relax that and be able to find a balance.
Yeah,
you know, kind of rock until you find a balance, because your spine will support you with very little muscle effort. And that's kind of the spot you want to get to.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Rodrigo?
Sometimes I think that we have back pain because the core region is very weak.
Yeah.
So doing the planche is good. But once in a while I get a terrible back pain here and I just breathe into it and it disappears. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rodrigo. That's good advice. Yeah, if you're getting shoulder or back pain, then it's either your neck is straining, you know, backward, you know, it's pulling back or forward, and it's just putting strain on your shoulders, and you know, or your hands or you're holding your hands up, you know, and that lifts your shoulders, and then those muscles can kind of cramp up a little bit. Okay. All right, all great questions. Thank you so much. So I want to talk a little bit about, you know, why are we doing this? You know, why are we even doing meditation, you know? And you know, we come into it for a lot of reasons. You know, we want, like, you know, Ken mentioned, I think last week, that, you know, to relieve stress, or, you know, out of curiosity, or because we're suffering in some way in life and we're looking for answers for that and all that stuff. And, you know, those are all fine reasons to get going. As you know, some people come right into it. I want to be enlightened, you know, well, that's fine too. Whatever the reason is, it's fine. Just, you know, start your practice and it goes from there. But I think I would go further on this, and because I wanted to talk about the mechanics kind of this, and why we have these practices, why we have meditation practice, or koan practice, or big mind practice with Roshi. It's because there's a thing that has always worked in our lives that we're relying on, which is the relationship between realization and actualization. Okay, so we've all had realizations, thousands of them, tens of thousands through our whole life, right? We've realized all sorts of different odds and ends about life and about things, some profound and some pretty mundane. You know, even in the womb, you know, there's some realizations that happen there, right? Because we have a consciousness, and realization leads to actualization. In other words, when we realize something, it affects how we see the world and how we behave and how we respond and react to the world. It's based on realizations that we've had. And so we realized, you know, early on that our mother's our mother, and there's other beings, and I'm talking about like when you're a baby, there's other beings moving around, and that there's milk, and summer, and then there's animals and plants and all these objects around us, and we just start to realize, oh, there's all these things. And this is before we maybe even have language to identify it, but we start to realize these things, and then we get older and we realize that there's boys and girls, all of a sudden, and there's men and women, and there's old and young, and we realize things about pain and pleasure, and we realize about liking and not liking, or just neutrality. And these realizations, once you have one, you kind of can't go back to the way you were before you had it. Okay. And so they build upon each other, and we get older and older, and for example, there's a point for some of us, and I don't want to tell this secret necessarily if you still believe in Santa Claus, but there's a point as a kid where you go, wow, I guess there really isn't a Santa Claus, and you can't go back to where you thought there was, right? And so these things change our perception of the world, and they change the way we see our roles in the world, and these realizations are often about who we are, and who we think we are, and mostly about who we think we are. And we realize we have a voice, and we have language, and we can start to manipulate the world, and we learn how to do that, and we develop these survival strategies and tactics based on who we think we are and how we are going to make it in the world, how we're going to survive, right? And they shape our personality, they shape our survival strategies, like I say. And so that's the actualization part from the realization. Okay. So in Zen, and the way the Buddha laid it out, knowing how this works was just that he had realizations, and it affected the way he saw everything, and that affected his behavior, and he saw that if people have these certain types of realizations, that would improve their lives. It would help relieve suffering, which was his goal. And so the realizations, that they talk about all the time is, for example, impermanence. And we talked about impermanence last week, and you've heard a lot about it, and everybody kind of knows nothing's really permanent in the world, or in the universe, or in myself. My body's not permanent. My thoughts, my emotions, feelings are not permanent. The people around me, the objects around me are not permanent. Nothing is permanent. And so this is, a realization that affects how you take in the world and how you behave in the world. And then, another one, interdependent co-arising, that everything is one thing. We're all made up of the same stuff, and all the objects we see around ourselves, including ourselves, are all sort of made out of the same stuff. And over time, through cause and effect, all these atoms and molecules and things, have turned into cars and iPhones and people and animals and rocks and dirt and, stars, everything, right? So we get this sort of realization of oneness, and there's others, right? But the Buddha is wanting us to have these realizations for the purpose of understanding the true nature of life and the world around us. And from that, it affects our behavior. Now, it doesn't do it overnight. It doesn't do it, like the day you realize there isn't a Santa Claus, you don't immediately go out and change all your behavior. I mean, these realizations take time, and they get deeper and deeper, but they eventually actualize. They eventually become part of your life. So, and one of the things that they say in Zen all the time is, well, there's no self. And that's a little freaky, because it's like, wait a minute, I have a self. I can see, I can see you. I can see, I talk, I think, therefore I am, that kind of thing. And so what do we really mean by that? It's actually that, of course, there's a self, but it's not a fixed self, because we've seen that there's impermanence. So it's a constantly changing thing. Okay. And what becomes kind of permanent, seemingly, is what we think the self is. Okay, but even our thoughts about what we think the self is always change. So this is an interesting and wonderful sort of doorway to liberation, a doorway to freedom, that if everything is changing all the time, that means it can change. and of course, most of the time we don't want anything to change for the worse. We want things to change for the best. But that's a different kind of question, and that goes into our thinking about who we are and our roles, and who I am as a person, and what's better or worse, and that kind of thing. But fundamentally, we have this incredible total freedom. At any second, we can just do whatever, right? And of course, we don't necessarily go crazy and run naked down the street or something like that. Some people do, but we have this freedom, and the possibilities is infinite possibilities, right? And so through realization and actualization and understanding impermanence and interdependent co-arising and these other things, and karma, cause and effect over time, we have this certain feeling of liberation if we can have these realizations in our lives. And so the way we try to have these realizations is we put some effort in, and we find a teacher, and maybe we meditate, and maybe we do koan study, and we do big mind, and we find all these different ways, what we call skillful means, to help us deeply have these kind of realizations. But it's and from the realizations, they actualize in our life. So I mentioned a second ago, who we think we are. And maybe at one point in your life, somebody went to you and said, who do you think you are for doing such and such a thing, right? So who do you think you are? And Mark, you want to make a comment before I go any further?
I find this very interesting what you're saying, and what comes up for me is it's interesting that we, and then there's all this talk about realization, and I'm really struck by your observation that once you have a realization, you can't undo it, you can't go back. But you could say that this practice is about having a realization that undoes your previous realization.
That's
and
right.
What does that take? I mean, you say that, we realized as infants, or sooner or later, that we're independent of other creatures, or that we're separate from other creatures. And
Right.
yet the realization that we're kind of pointing ourselves towards with this practice is the reverse of that.
Yeah.
So the question then is, well, what does it take to have a realization that undoes the earlier realizations,
Well,
and is it a practice? Is it a technique? Is it something you get hit over the head with, or what,
all of the above.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get hit over the
Yeah.
head with it,
Yeah.
But I would say that each realization kind of somehow either alters or even destroys a previous realization.
Yeah, and I think that's the ultimate, is to have a realization that destroys all the previous realization, which sounds kind of forbidding and maybe undesirable, but that is one way you could say what this practice is about, undoing all those realizations. And also why it's not so simple and easy.
It's not so simple. And of course, there's been all these debate in the Zen school forever about, the northern and southern school, the sudden school versus the gradual school. And I would say that it's gradual until it's sudden, and then it can be gradual again, and then it can be sudden. And realizations come in all sorts of different ways. They can come from just life experience, or from your looking deeply into these things or into yourself. And so, what I'd like to do actually for a second is do a little bit of big mind practice about this. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that, basically what I'd like to do is speak to a certain part of yourself and just hear what it has to say. And so first, I'd like to just speak to the self. And so anybody can raise their hand and tell me, who are you? Who are you as the self? What is the self, yourself? Rodrigo?
I'm a needy person trying to do better.
Okay.
Yeah. With many stages. I cannot really define the self, but it's like something like a river that is going on. It has many curves and storms and dryness. That's what I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's myself.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Who are you? That's pretty, it's the kind of question you get that you have to put on resumes, right? Paul?
It's a strange question for me as talking as the self, but I'm Paul, I'm a father, I'm working as a consultant. I have emotions. I'm sometimes happy, sometimes sad. I'm quite happy with myself. I feel good.
Yeah, that's great. Good. Hi, Cami. Hey, we're speaking to the self, in case you'd like to offer. Who are you? Ken?
It's certainly a challenging question. And I think we certainly all have a selfishness about us, as human beings. But I've become more aware over time how I tell a story to myself about my life. I'm a narrator in a way. I'm not speaking to myself, in a third person or anything like that. But that you'll build these narratives about your life. So you're telling stories in a way of building an identity over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do it. So who's Ken?
Who am I as an individual?
Yeah.
I'm a seeker.
Speak as Ken's self.
I'm a person who's looking for connections with other human beings. A person who values deep, important connections. I'm a person that can be petty at times and shallow, and also can be selfless at times as well. So I'm a person who's trying trying to be a better person, I think, in many ways.
Mhm. Yeah, I see that. Ruth, did you have your hand up for a second?
I kind of, it depends. I'm so much contradiction, but part of me is a little girl who wants sort of permission to feel okay. I mean, I'm a lot more than that. That's it for now.
Okay. Good. Anybody else want to tell me who they are? As the self? Cammy?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to put it. I'm kind of full of ideas about how I should be. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, and it's all ideas though, like how to best fit in, how to be successful in a job, how to be successful in relationships, and how to present oneself in certain situations. And yeah, I mean, a lot of what I think his name was Ken said,
Yeah.
It resonated with me. And it's like I sit here though, and it's like hard to, it's just a compilation of all that. I'm a compilation of all that, rather than I can't pick one. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I have, I am a professional, or I am a Zen student. I mean, sometimes you pick them, but it changes constantly. So yeah, I'm just kind of noticing that, but it's ideas of how I think I should be in a certain situation, and it's always different.
Yeah. Same for me. Colleen?
What's coming up for me is I know and I don't know. So I have all of these ideas, how I've lived my life these 58 years, and how I see myself, how I want to see myself, how others might see me. And then there's a place in me that's like, I don't even know. It's really beautiful. I like the question.
Yeah. Thank you. Ruth, did you have something else?
I mean, I said permission to feel okay, but it's so much more than that. It's permission to be powerful. Maybe that's just permission to be loved, permission to love, just permission. But there's a lot of power behind that, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Marcus, did you have something?
Yeah. It's dark here right now, and there may be some problems with connection because I'm from Ukraine. It's war right now here. When I asked myself this question, I was very surprised because the only answer was my job. Like, myself is my job, and that's it. And it was kind of a very disappointing answer to me. Because I thought I was way more than only my job. Maybe because I'm a young one, So that's why myself answered, well, you're a filmmaker, and that's basically it. So that's
Yeah.
how it is.
Yeah. Well, you know, I can so relate. I mean, I think we're all the same this way, you know. It's what we are, what's on our resume. You know, I've got a degree, or I've got a job, or I'm a dad, or I'm a wife, or I'm a you know, I'm all these things, and I have all these characteristics, right? Various characteristics. I want to do good. I want to be better. I want to be free of pain, whatever. And these things are all things we, you know, we've thought of and built up over the years through all these realizations about how to get along in the world. And yet, you know, it doesn't, I think a couple of you said it, it's kind of hard to describe, because yeah, it, you know, when you put it that way, it's like, well, I am so much more than this, but what is that? You know, what is that? This is a classic Zen question, you know, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Over and over again. And you know, I want to frame it this way, though. You know, I think it was Shakespeare, and Mark can always correct me on these things, but I think he said, all the world is a stage and we are but players in it, right? And all these things that we've described just now are roles. They're roles that we play. You know, I'm a dad, I'm a student, I'm a doctor, I'm, you know, whatever. And it's okay, you know, it's okay to have a role. I think where the problem comes in is when we think that our role actually is who we are, and we get attached to that. And even just like actors, you know, we have uniforms for all of our roles. Like, see, I'm wearing this rock suit thing, right, that we have in Zen for put on when I'm teaching. You know, and a cop has a uniform, and a doctor has their whatever they're called, I can't remember now. But you know, we have these costumes and things that are part of our roles. And when we're not wearing the costume, we're a different person in a way. And this is a very interesting thing, because none of these things really are our essence. There's something that we've taken on, that we've built, that we've made into what we think is ourself. And if you get too attached to that role, then you can suffer a lot when you don't have that role anymore. You know, I think this happens when you know, people's children grow up and leave the home. Gosh, am I really a dad anymore, right? What do I do now? Who am I now? Or you lose a job, or all of a sudden you get a job and you go, wow, now I'm this, you know. And so in Buddhism, of course, we talk about attachments all the time, and how the attachments are kind of the source of suffering. And of course, they could be the source of joy too. And this is back to our pleasure and pain and liking and not liking and all this stuff. And so our roles tend to steer our life in a lot of ways. But then, you know, I think if we go back to some of these realizations that we're having, these more profound realizations about impermanence and dependent co-arising and things like that, we can sort of loosen those attachments. We can soften those attachments. We can roll with the changes. And I think that is definitely a part of our practice. Mark, you have your hand up.
I was resonating with pretty much everything I heard, and I think people expressed that very well. Another thing that occurred to me is that as a self, I do resist being, you know, kind of characterized in some way or typecast or something, because I know I'm more than that. And also, I know that you'll never know me. And it's not that I don't know me, there's a dimension of that, but also I feel like there's so much more going on in here than I can communicate, but I'm very aware that that is going on. And another side of that is that I am aware that you, all of you, everyone else is not me. You know, I'm really separate. And I'm, you know, I'm proud of that in some ways, or even, you know, kind of arrogant about it. But there's also a kind of feeling, you will never know me. I will never know you. We're just that separate. And that's the kind of realization, to use your word, Bruce, you know, that goes very deep and also has a lot of kind of dimensions to it, and also is welcome and also, you know, kind of regrettable. But that sense of just the more I'm aware of myself, the more I'm aware that I'm not anybody else and I'm unknowable. And there's always this separation between me and all of you and everyone else.
You're absolutely right. And this is, you know, the root of the problem is if we think we are our roles, then how can, and everyone has different roles, how can we all be one, really, you know? And it's also a lonely and difficult place to operate from. And of course we feel defensive at times and protective at times and greedy at times, selfish at times. You know, these are all things that are part of our suffering, you know. But if we look at roles as something that, you know, a role is something that's played in a very specific production, right? And so when I'm a dad, you know, I take on that role very seriously. And then, you know, when I'm a buddy, you know, that's another thing. And when I'm a husband, that's another thing. And to be able to flow freely between these roles, I think is a very important thing, is to know that, okay, this is just a role. But I'm going to give it all I got. And in my next role, I'm going to give that all I got, and not just stay stuck. Okay. Now it's one thing it's kind of easy in a way to do that. Like when I'm at work, I'm going to do my job and I'm going to do a really good job. And when I'm home, I'm going to, you know, do the things I need to do at home. The ones that are hard to move on from are the ones where we've typecast ourselves. And we may even think that other people, of course, we all typecast each other, right? You know, I've known Mark for 20 years and he's right. You know, I don't really know. I mean, I know him pretty well. We're really good friends, but, you know, I don't know everything that's going on inside him. But we typecast people, and we can do it really quick too, you know, and very unfairly. But we do it to ourselves in a much more permanent way. We tell ourselves sometimes that, you know, I'm not worthy. You know, I'm not good enough. Or I'm awesome. I'm awesome all the time. You know, and it's arrogance, right? Or we can typecast ourselves in so many ways. And sometimes our roles play into that, and sometimes they play against it. And depending on what part of ourself we want to defend, we'll quit the job or we'll quit the, you know, the typecasting or something. But, you know, it's very confusing and it's lonely, like Mark said, because, you know, we're in this world alone in a lot of ways. And every time we take on a role, we have to also think that we're doing it for some kind of reward. We're doing it for money, or we're doing it for approval, or self-approval, others' approval, all these different ways. So the mechanics of that too is very tricky and seductive, and can help us to stick in places we might not want to stick. Cami, you had a hand up? Well, you're muted.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think what Mark said was super important about seeing everybody else as separate. I mean, and kind of also to go along with what you were saying as this separate self, I judge everybody and I compare myself to everybody. And so it's always comparisons. I come out better or worse. I'm superior or inferior. Or, like you say, typecast, I ascribe certain things, but it's going to be typecast in an inferior or superior way. And I do that to myself, again, much like what you were saying, I judge myself all the time, and I compare myself, and I'm hard on myself, or I'm patting myself on the back. I mean, it's all just kind of ridiculous, and seeing that, I'm just this individual that has to either step up and be better, or maybe other people should step up to my standards. I don't know, it all gets very very convoluted. Anyway, what you guys were talking about made me think about that comparison thing is probably my deepest rooted pattern, perhaps, comparison and judgment.
Yeah, well, like that starts very early, right? I mean, right from when you're born, it's like, if I'm not getting what I want, what do? You scream and holler until you get your diaper changed or whatever, right? I mean, it starts very, very young.
And you compare yourself to your siblings, you compare yourself to your classmates. You're graded in comparison to your classmates. I mean, it's being done to you, and then you learn to do it to yourself and others. So
yeah,
this goes way back.
This is all what we call in Buddhism the world of samsara. Okay, the world of suffering and continuous dualistic thinking of judging everything and comparing. I read a thing just a couple of days ago. It was sad about it was about people who were born since 2000, as the first generation that's grown up with the internet and everything. And they're talking about how boys and girls, operate a little differently, and that boys tend to kind of get together and play video games and kill each other, on video games, but girls will go on Instagram or Facebook and do what they call compare and despair. Right? It's like, oh, that girl's so much hotter than me, or that girl's richer than me, or that girl's got this and I don't, right? And it's sad. And it's pervasive.
I think that magnifies what I was saying, that this media magnifies all that stuff that I already grew up with as a self, just by going to school, but to have it in your face all the time on social media. Yeah.
It just cuts you down, at the knees, that kind of stuff. And it's happened to all of us, and we've all, to varying degrees. Ruth?
I just want to say, I mean, what Cami said really resonates with me. That binary sort of better, worse, and it's part of a zero sum thing. And what Mark said about knowing other people or being different from, and I just have to respond to Mark as another twin. I mean, I've got a fraternal twin sister, and it's really, I mean, there was one point in my life I realized I wanted to merge with her. I mean, I'm happily married, blah, blah, but I'm 66 years old, and I spent time with her, like extended time, like 2 weeks in upstate New York. We've been doing that for since last summer. And I looked at her and I said, it was like this realization I had. And I said, wow, Janet, we're different. And she cracked up. I mean, she was shocked that I would say something like that. I mean, it was so obvious to her. And to me, it was mind blowing, like to say, we're not the same person.
There's a realization that is going to actualize itself in your life.
It was really
a perfect example.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, so if we have this realization, of that everything is one, then how does that change it? I'll tell you, you realize that everything is one and that we're all suffering with these same things. And all of a sudden you see, oh, there's me as a policeman. There's me as a grocery checker. There's me as a dog. There's me as my twin or not, right? And but you see this all of a sudden when the separation is gone, you are everybody and everybody is you. Wouldn't that be wonderful? So let's see. Okay, let's talk to a different voice then. Let me speak to the opposite of the self. Ken,
I'm not sure I understand the question or the task. Could help me.
well, we spoke to this, we spoke to the self, and we heard from the self, which is different than Ken. Now we're going to speak whatever it is that's the opposite of the self. Marcus?
Well, it's something that that don't actually care about anything.
Something that doesn't care about anything. Okay.
It's I don't know how to describe it. My English is not very good, but it's like no problems. Just don't care. Just as it is.
Yeah, no problem. Breathe easy. Mark?
Yeah, maybe picking up on what Marcus said. As the opposite of no self, you ask me, who am I? I don't know, and I don't care.
Colleen?
I'm timeless. I've been here forever, no beginning, no end. Just open and spacious and infinite.
Lovely. Rodrigo?
It is my name, which is Ichinio, which is whatever it is with whatever the thing was.
Okay.
Means no subject, no object.
Yeah, you're not the self, so you don't have. So as the opposite of the self, how do you see the self?
Me?
Sure.
Very limited.
Very limited. In what way?
Because as I describe it in others too, the self is the role, what happens, what others think of me, what I think of myself. So it's a lot of little things all together in none of them, and more than them. And besides that, I myself, as Mark said, sorry if I confuse you. I'm also confused. Don't worry.
It's a wonderful place to be. Anybody else? Paul?
I'm struggling, not being myself. So I'm not myself. But am I this bottle then, which isn't standing in front of me, or this lamp, or all the faces I see there, or it's all not me? But I don't know. That's it also feels frustrating in a way. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm not
Okay.
not sure yet.
Well, it's a big jump.
Mhm.
We're very, very used to, kind of having a self and thinking we know what it is. We're not so used to just being without it.
Now it opens.
But it's kind of a relief not to have the self in charge for a few minutes, I think. Okay, I think we've got time. I'm gonna come at this maybe from a little different direction. A number of you mentioned that, you want to do better, be better, at different things. So I'd like to speak to the seeking mind, the mind that is seeking. Okay, and feel that feeling of seeking or wanting. Just feel how that feels, and raise your hand when you want to speak as the seeking mind. Rodrigo?
seeking mind for me is a pleasure and a torture.
Okay. Colleen?
For me, Bruce, seeking mind, well, as seeking mind, I have an insatiable appetite to know.
Yeah, you do indeed. Does it feel a certain way in the body?
Very energized,
Uh-huh.
energy moving. Can't wait to get to the next wherever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because a seeking mind, you're just like seeking everything, right? Ruth?
That hunger might it's not a pleasurable feeling. It's
The hunger.
a hunger, yeah.
Okay. Cami?
Yeah, what's coming up for me is basically I I need something or I want something I don't have, and I don't necessarily even know what that is.
Okay,
There's just like a, like almost a longing for something, but I don't even always know what that is. Maybe sometimes I do, you know, I might be seeking mundane things, you know, items, but, or maybe I'm seeking status or approval, but, you know, there's also a seeking that's less defined. It's like this longing, and that's, yeah, that's the one I can't really put the label on.
do you feel more affiliated with the self or the opposite of the self?
Mostly with the self. There's a possibility, I would say the self, because there's something I don't have that I want. I mean, I'm highly aligned with the self.
Yeah, that's the self for sure.
Yeah.
Anybody
Yeah, I
else?
would say as that when we were in the opposite of the self, you know, there was nothing. I'm irrelevant as the seeking mind. I'm irrelevant.
Yeah, in the opposite of the self, there's no
Right.
seeking happening,
So I'm
right?
definitely aligned with the self. Yeah.
And the self wants a lot. Marcus?
Yeah, as the self, as the seeking mind, you feel some sort of heaviness because you have the feeling that you need so much to do. You still have so much to do. And compared to the opposite of the self, it's kind of not very, very good feeling.
Yeah, it's a never-ending job, right? I mean, all day, every day. Rodrigo?
It is like a pendulum at different speeds. From the one to the other.
Yeah, as soon as you get something, then you look for the next thing, right? That's that hunger. Paul?
I'm never satisfied. So even if I find, I seek further because it's constant. It's pressure, have to go. Even if I'm there, I need to go on. Constantly wants to understand, never satisfied. Never there.
Yeah. Okay. You guys, I feel it too, you know. Okay, let's talk with one more voice then. Let me speak to the non-seeking mind. The non-seeking mind. And just let that in. Ken?
So I think this might be a little closer to what I was speaking about, maybe one of the first or second times I spoke about a way of going about things or something like that. So a non-seeking mind, what that brings, or, you know, kind of what I imagine that to be would be somebody who, you know, let's say when you're cutting wood and you're not worried about a particular problem or learning about a particular thing, you're just doing the task at hand. Is that's maybe something I could describe as a non-seeking mind. You're not trying to do anything beyond what what's immediately in front of you.
Yeah. In this big mind process, we usually, try to frame it as you're speaking as the non-speaking mind. So it'd be like, as the non-seeking mind, I'm not
Okay.
just doing the task at hand kind of thing, right? Yeah. You're not. Sorry about that. Yeah, you don't need to do anything but what's right in front of you, right? Colleen?
As non-seeking mind, all is well. There's a real peace and freedom here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no pressure to do anything. Ruth?
As the non-speaking mind, I am right here now in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
In the present, I'm present. Only present.
Yeah. Marcus?
As non-seeking mind comes the opposite of self. So basically, in my case, when you ask to have the opposite of self, I was wondering how to name myself. And now, in my case, I can say that this is non-seeking mind.
Yeah. Good, good. Rodrigo?
As not seeking mind, I accept whatever it is at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Ruth, did you have something else, or? It's okay. So what I find interesting, in this is that, number one, look how quickly we were able to change and to shift. It's just a matter in a way of calling it up. And I would recommend that when you're doing your meditation, maybe you just say to yourself, sit as the non-seeking mind. Okay. And realize that, you can make these shifts. We don't have to be stuck. We don't have to be stuck as, constantly trying to get something or hungering for something or stressing over something. You can give yourself permission. Ruth, I give you permission to sit as the non-seeking mind. And all of you. And give yourself permission. And, for 20 minutes or so. And then, when you come out of your meditation, don't just jump right up, just kind of, slowly kind of stand up and stretch a little bit, and then, okay, seeking mind to come on back because I got stuff to do, and go do it. And think of these as other roles that you can have, as these different states of mind. And there's many, many more. Okay. And it's, we talk about mindfulness and awareness and all that's a big topic, right? It's a lot of that is, it's not about just like noticing every little stone in the path in front of you. It's about noticing your internal situation, right? Your internal posture, you might say. And know that, by just having that awareness and recognizing, okay, I'm really stressed right now, or I'm angry right now, or I'm feeling kind of selfish right now, or whatever, whatever you're doing, or I'm feeling really content and happy right now. Just notice that. And you don't have to change anything. Just noticing it will change a little bit. It'll actualize from that awareness, from that realization. It'll act out in yourself. But know that, you can have some control. You have some control over situations in life, and it's kind of just that easy. And with a little practice, it gets it a little bit easier even. So we're kind of out of time, but I don't mind staying for a few minutes if you have any more questions, or I could just leave everybody in the non-seeking mind and relax the rest of the day. All right. Well, thank you very much. Really enjoyed it. Looks forward to next Saturday.
Thank you. That was brilliant.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yep. Thanks, Mark.